Okay,
He's one of the good guys, isn't he?
He's great. Turn this off so it doesn't make any noise. Okay. So, Eddie, would you be able to speak a little bit about just a brief history of the entire street?
Yeah, this street is actually a microcosm of Waterford itself, because I'm sure there are other villages and towns and cities indeed that have a street or streets that Waterford people can identify with. Now, whilst you might think that we should be identified with O'Connell Street, with the Quay and with major thoroughfares like that, this street is where a lot of people in Waterford can identify with, because it was the gateway to the sporting events that happened in the north of the city. And indeed, if you wanted to come down to the south of the city, into the heart of the city, you could only come down two ways, down Patrick Street or down this way here. And there were arteries leading into the centre of the city. The city itself, if one looks at it from a height, from where we are at the moment, you can see that water is actually built into a valley. People don't realise we're in a valley. And these heights that we're on at the moment, and they are heights. If one were to put a plank from here across the valley break, there might be a deviation of about a foot in the difference, because of that closely aligned. We're outside the city. We're outside. We're in Trinity without. This is Trinity without, for ecclesiastical purposes. Trinity within is down where the cathedral is. So basically, we're in the heart of the country, as was in Old Waterford.
Okay, and so when would this street have been formed then? Would it be back to Viking, medieval?
No, it wouldn't have been back as far as the British are totally responsible for this street, because you see in the street a lot again revert back to the towns and to the villages, and indeed the cities, the other cities that would have, every one of them would have a barrack street, but they'd be called after RAC barracks, Royal Irish Constabulary barracks, the police force of the day. Whereas the major ones like Waterford and Cork, Barrack Street in Cork, there's a Barrack Street in Limerick, Barrack Street, and all those would be called Barrack Street after the military barracks. And indeed the military barracks were, and I use the plural there, barracks, were here in Waterford. There were three of them in this street, up at Mikey Norris's corner up there. You had the cavalry regiment used to bunk down up there. Then Cartridge's Avenue across the road were the artillery regiment. And then down here was the infantry. And indeed, just as an addendum to that, Waterford and Dublin and Cork were the only three cities that had a naval squadron attached to them as well. To get from the city, to get from the docks to here, meant that you had to come through the heart of the old city, which meant you could be open to, as the British would have called it, insurgents or terrorists or whatever they want to call it for the time. So they built this new road leading from roughly where the bridge is, across the top of the city, over to here, Barrack Street, which meant that everything, as you can visualize coming up that street, is called Military Road. Everything to the right was Indian country, it was barren country, it was barren fields, there were no houses, and indeed the main road from Waterford to Cork went up to the top of the Yellow Road into Boherbue country, the land of the Yellow country, the end of the Yellow Firs. That's why it's called Boherbue, after the Yellow Firs that grew in abundance up there. So they built this lovely road across there, which meant that they could contain anything that happened south of it and north of it. There was nothing to contend with. They then built the barracks as was ever before. I suppose even before the churches were built there, they had barracks there. And reverting back again to the topography of the place, you would have seen that they're on a height. They can see everything. They don't have to worry about people coming at them from behind. There's nothing going to come down from the north, because the north extends into the county. The nearest trouble spot, as they would see in the county, was probably maybe Kilmacouncil, certainly Dungarvan, which meant they had plenty of time to respond to anything that was happening. So the city in itself would have been, the guardian of the city would have been here. And there was another big military barracks over on on Ballybricken Hill as well, which thwarted the efforts of Mr. Cromwell and co. when they came across to try and take the country, take the city, which they never did. So basically, that's the reason that the Barrack Street exists as such. Now, and then when a street like Barrack Street started up, then it was like you could see the Indian reservations. If you ever see old films, the Indian reservations, you'll see piles of Indians outside, and there's trappers selling stuff there and everything, because they all congregated there to this place, and they all would have congregated here. And indeed, back in 1810, I think there was 32 pubs in this street. I mean, just in fact, you say there's not 32 houses in it, but there was plenty of houses in it, but there were 32 pubs. Everyone had a pub or a shebeen of some description, where they could cater for the needs of the occupying forces, because these fellas had money to spend, number one. And number two, if they were going into Barrack Street, they weren't going too far away from the home base, and they could drink their brains out over here. And then the little lanes off of them became crucial they were British, they came to the British Army. And there's one instance of a lane that's caused me anguish and heartache for many a year, Five Alley Lane. I went, and how many times I've always only counted four lanes. There's only 4 lanes. So how did they get the name 5? And I for years had tried to get this, and I couldn't come to the bottom of this until I was out with the Little Sisters doing a thing for old people. And the next thing is, this woman knew me, and she said, I saw that thing you did on Water Late the other night, she said. This was a little television program we used to do on WLR. And that was very good, she said, but you never gave the reason why Five Alley Lane is called Five Alley Lane. It was like manna from heaven to me, you know. I didn't do it, I said, I didn't know what it was. And she up and she told me, for recreation, for gambling, the British Army troops off duty would come across to the now entrance to Ballybricken Church, which is at the top of, in brackets, Five Alley Lane, and they would play a game of skittles called fives. So instead of having 8 skittles, they had 5 skittles. So they were going across to play fives, and just for big money. There might be a week's wages each they might have invested in this game. And it's many a time that the constabulary at the time, the Royal Irish Constabulary, would have broken this up, and they would try to break it up. I mean, the Welsh regiments were here. Always Welsh regiments, or the Gurkhas who came here, for R&R as they call it, rest and recreation during the First World War.
So, in a sense, they were playing a child's game. Is it kind of a children's kind of game, Skittles, I suppose? But just involved with gambling.
Yeah. It was actually people, where there's nothing to do, people would invent things. Like I can recall hearing a story about 2 Ballybricken fellas who were so into gambling, and this is a true story, they were so into gambling that on a wet day they would sit in the pub and they would bet on little drops of rain running down the windows, to which drop went got down to the front. They bet money on this. And if you all avidly looking at them, can you imagine the people going outside, people looking at them like that, saying, what's up? Actually, they're only betting on the drops of water or condensation running down the window. So that fives would have been a game that they could play, couldn't cause too much trouble with the hierarchy of the army. It could be seen as a juvenile game. It was anything but juvenile. There's lots of money invested in it.
So there was much dabbling around the time there was.
Oh God Almighty, sure. I mean,
was there any particular people that would gamble more than others in certain areas of the city?
No, it's the I hate using this word, but I use it. It was the lower class of the British Army in the sense that anybody below sergeants and upwards seemed to have a life of their own. They created an army. They created the situation for the British Army. And the fellas below that would have been only Joe Souls. Would be looking for an extra couple of hours. There wasn't too many things they could do to get the few up. At the bottom of the street down here, there's a little lane down there called Butcher's Lane. And as we used to say, young fellas, the Jewman had a place down there. And the Jewman, the Wolfsons down there, they'd buy anything, bottles, lead. And at that stage, then, people were getting rid of the old ranges they had in the houses. This is a range, the forerunner of the Yagger Cooper, where you could put in coal and you could get massive stuff done on it. But these became unfashionable, so people started putting in new ones. So you brought it down to the Jewman, and he gave you money for it. And what you did, you waited till he went home, and you opened the roof, and went in, and you took your thing back. So we were all the young fellas were mad getting in through the top, whipping stuff, and eventually they copped on to the fact that these fellas would come back. There must have been 20,000 houses in water with ranges. There weren't anything like it, you know. You're just robbing the stuff and bringing it back to them to get a couple of bob extra. And another thing where you get a lot of stuff, collect stuff, you get it out on the dump, you see. Waterford City dump, but you can't see anymore because it's turned into a beautiful park out there. But that, you've often seen photographs of Bombay and all these cities in India in particular, where they scour the dumps looking for stuff that they can recycle. That was where we would get our stuff. Again, bicycle wheels. We'd get bicycle wheels were very important because bicycle wheels, you play the game, or we played a game with bicycle wheels. We got a wheel, piece of stick, and you put it along the road in front of you. You call it nasing, N-A-A-S-I-N-G, nasing, racing, a corruption word, racing. And you naced your bike home, and actually you could run twice as fast if you were nacing it, because you wouldn't be tired. You're concentrating on keeping the wheel at the centre of the road, you know. But the street itself, at the top of the street, you know, Mrs. Tracy had a shop at the top of the street. She sold sweets up there, homemade sweets. Now, a JCB wouldn't break the sweets, they were so hard, you know. So you're guaranteed to get the suckability in them was fantastic. You could be sucking it for 2 days, and you might only take it down, diminish it slightly, you know.
How much would that cost you?
Halfpenny. For a halfpenny you get some.
What else could you get for a halfpenny?
You get a halfpenny square. A halfpenny square was Cleves in Limerick had lovely squares of toffee. And you could go in there and get a halfpenny square. That halfpenny square was a status symbol, because if you had a halfpenny square in your mouth, you were the king. And you're not going to believe this, but nowadays they talk about hygiene. If something falls on the ground, don't pick that up, there could be germs on it. The big thing you did when you had a halfpenny square, someone said, "Can I have a suck off your square?" And you took it out of your mouth and you handed it to them. And they went, sucked it for as much as they could, you know. Then they handed you back your square. You were happy then, you have to keep them happy, and you have to keep yourself happy. But nobody ever thought about the consequences of what might happen. The great Davy Welsh, a soccer player.
Yeah. Could I just stop you there for a second? I just need to stop this and start it again, because it only